Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We got a we got a huge crowd in here today. This is all really very, very exciting. I'll try to be in a place where people can see me a little bit better, and we can actually talk about immutability and ransomware and all that kind of stuff. By way of introduction, my name is Martin Merrill. I'm principal sales engineer for Arcserve. I've been with Arcserve for almost 90 days now, so I've got some seniority over people who've been hired after me. But that's just about it. And today we're going to be talking about leveling up your ransomware readiness. Essentially, we're going to talk about ways in which you can not necessarily protect against being infected. That's kind of not the thing, but it's essentially what you can do so that if you do get attacked by ransomware, you're going to be able to recover. So we're going to talk about a couple of strategies and some things that we can do. Now, to set things up, let me kind of explain to you who Arcserve is. That's not the one we wanted. Let's see if we can go back here. No, looks like, okay. Yeah, this is us. All right, so Arcserve, we've been around for quite a while, more than 30 years. In fact, we could probably claim that we've got the largest breadth of different disaster recovery and backup data resiliency products that are on the market today, simply because we've been around for a good long time. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about what it is that Arcserve is doing. Particularly today, we're going to be talking about some ways in which you can protect your backup data and those types of things. But you can see we're into quite a bit of stuff. We've got all sorts of different tools that can guard against a number of different ransomware attacks, backup, data breaches, and all those kind of things that might really compromise the data that we've got. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk much more about us, but we've been around for quite a while. When it comes to the different products that Arcserve is responsible for, our solutions run the gamut anywhere from products that are designated specifically for small to medium businesses all the way up to the enterprise. And as you can see there's a number of different products that have been highlighted, including small to medium business products that are held with our StorageCraft products. StorageCraft, by the way, is an organization that Arcserve purchased about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago. But then again, there's a bunch of other stuff that we've been developing for quite a while, our unified or data protection, all the way up to some high-end enterprise products as well in the different appliances that we offer. So I'm going to transition now. We're going to talk specifically about your data. All right. Why is it important for us to be able to protect our data? Why is that? Why is it even important? Data is the lifeblood of business anymore. It's because of our data that we are able to, be able to react to trends in the industry, all the stuff that we're able to collect and analyze to help us to be able to grow our business. Now, there are some challenges when it comes to managing your data, and among them is the fact that our data is growing so rapidly anymore that it's kind of hard to get ahead of it. Being able to manage all the data that's being created day in and day out can sometimes be a real struggle. So, we're highlighting some of these issues right now. Data creation is actually going to rise to over 180 zettabytes by 2025. Now, to give you a little bit of context here, I want to show you right here. This is kind of what it looks like when we're talking about data, from kilobytes all the way up to, I love this particular word, your yottabytes or yottabytes, whatever that's called. But we're talking in terms of zettabytes, right there near the bottom. Zettabytes is 1,000 exabytes, and is as much information as there are grains of sand on all the world's beaches. So going back to what we were looking at before, we are, oops, no. No. I want to go back one more. How do we get back? There it is. So when data creation is going to rise to over 180 zettabytes by 2025, that's a whole lot of grains of sand when you consider that a zettabyte is a representation of every grain of sand across the planet. So that's a lot of data. Another statistic that I had heard is that, let's see, is it even, right here, the second one, 90% of the world's data has been produced in the last 2 years. So when you consider everything that's out there, everything that's ever been written, anything that we've ever put on our phones, Everything that's out there, 90% of that was actually produced within the last 2 years. And so you got to figure it's going to continue to grow even more as time goes on. Trying to get ahead of that, again, can be an incredibly difficult thing to do. And then this third point here, 95% of businesses cite that the need to manage unstructured data is the challenge for their business. Let's talk about that for just 1 second. When you consider the types of data that is out there, you're primarily looking at 2 different types. There's your structured data, and then there's your unstructured data. Your structured data, this is the stuff that, it's saved in a very particular format for quick, easy access. It's the kind of stuff that you might say is actually created when you're building spreadsheets and you're saving data in those spreadsheets. There's a very specific structure in those files that makes it easy to predict what type of storage you're going to need, how quick you can access it, all that kind of stuff. But the rest of it is unstructured data. Unstructured data is everything else that's out there, all right? And this is stuff that has no rhyme or reason to it. When you consider your unstructured data, you're talking about stuff like music files, Word documents, photos, video, all this other stuff that is being created just, at an incredible rate. And, you consider what you do with your own phone, right? You're constantly taking pictures, you're creating little videos, day in and day out, we're just terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data is being created and saved, and we need a place to keep it. And so when you consider that all of that also exists in the business world, in the IT world, that's a lot of stuff to try to be on top of. And it's that unstructured data that can be difficult because it's hard to predict, how much data you actually need. A single video file, for example, might take up a whole lot more space than you're used to or that you're wanting. So being able to know that you can, get into a solution that allows you to plan for that kind of data growth can be very, very difficult. So you want to be able to have something that's actually very flexible. So that's one thing, all right? Managing all of the data that's out there, all the data that you might be presented with, making sure that it's accessible, making sure that it's protected, making sure that you're actually able to scale right along with that growth. It's a very difficult thing to do. But then again, there's another challenge, and that is keeping that data safe. And one of the things that has become incredibly prevalent is this thing called ransomware. Right? Viruses, malware, these types of infections, they've been around for a long, long time. Ransomware is a little bit more recent, but essentially what we're dealing with, this is a way in which we can, perpetrators can essentially go out, bad actors can go out, they can infect the data, they can actually encrypt it, make sure that data is no longer accessible, readable, whatever, and the only way to get that data back or to get access to that data is to actually pay a ransom, pay a fee. They're essentially kidnapping your data, right? And this is affecting, or it can affect anybody. Nobody is really immune to a ransomware attack, all right? So let's take a look at some of the details here. Ransomware cost anywhere from around, right here in 2021, about $20 billion. So you can consider, this is more than just hackers sitting around in their basement with hoodies on, just kind of doing their thing. These are actual organizations. These are, I would say, criminal organizations that are very sophisticated, and they have found ways to be able to infiltrate environments and be able to literally, essentially take data hostage. And if you are unable, if you're unable to pay that ransom, if you're unable to actually get that back, you're sunk if there's no way to get that data back otherwise, right? Now take a look at that other statistic, so 20 billion in 2021, we're expecting that to rise by 265 billion by 2031. So 10 years from now, ransomware, we're still expecting to be quite a major issue. I don't think that it's going away. Next statistic, 37% of all businesses were hit by ransomware in 2021. That's a lot. I wouldn't have expected 37% of all businesses out there to have been affected. But as you can see, there's a nice old field of wheat ready to harvest by these ransomware folks. Like I said, anybody is a potential victim, and it's really not going away. 50% businesses suffered 50% more attempted cyber attacks per week in 2021 over 2020, and it looks like our targets are education, government, and healthcare. Right? If you consider yourself within any one of those different industries, that's probably pretty much everybody. I guess we're not talking public sector, or I guess government would be that, but private sector, it doesn't really matter. Anybody is a potential victim. And so, there's ways to address it, because if you don't address it, you're going to be on the hook for quite a bit of money in order to get your data back. So looking at these different challenges, being able to manage that incredible data growth, and then also to protect it specifically against issues and things like ransomware can be some major challenges. So what we're going to be focusing on primarily today is strategies in which we can take a look at ransomware, right? Which kind of brings us, I've already done that there, which brings us to your complete ransomware prevention strategy, all right? So when it comes to dealing with ransomwares, there are multiple layers that you probably need to consider, all right? Right up there at the top, cybersecurity. This is probably the first level, the first mode, I suppose, of strategy that you want to choose to implement, making sure that your systems are secure. And there's all sorts of things that you can put into place, right? There's multifunction authentication for those that want to access the data. There's anomaly detection. There's all sorts of different security methods that you can implement in order to lock down and keep people from being able to access that data. Identity and access management, single sign-on, all of those types of solutions that are out there can do the very best you can to prevent a cyber attack. But you'll also see there that there really are no silver bullets. There's nothing there that we can absolutely say for sure is going to keep you from getting hit by ransomware or any other kind of attack. When you consider the different places the different ways in which you can you can leave yourself vulnerable. There's bad actors within your organization that have access to systems that maybe they shouldn't have, but they do anyway, or they find a way to sneak in. There's individuals within the organization that they get an email, it's a phishing email or something else, but they don't necessarily know it. They haven't really thought much about it. They end up clicking the link and boom, they've just downloaded something now that can begin the spread of ransomware within their organization. So there's all sorts of different ways in which organizations are vulnerable to threats like ransomware and that type of thing. So there's really no silver bullets. Any business out there that has data needs to consider themselves a potential target. All right. Now, some good cybersecurity implementation is going to go a long way. We just can't be guaranteed, right? So the next thing is your orchestrated recovery. All right, what are we talking about when we're talking about orchestrated recovery? Well, we're talking about, making sure that you've got some solutions in place that will allow you to restore or to be able to recover from an attack like ransomware. Now, orchestrated recovery isn't necessarily all about ransomware. Anybody that has a good backup and disaster recovery solution in place is really preparing so that whether it's ransomware or some other compromise, something that can affect the data, that's essentially what your orchestrated, recovery is all about, making sure that you've got solutions in place. Because, ransomware isn't the only game in town. You might be, backing up your data because there might be some bad actors in your organization. Maybe you're doing it because you've got old hardware and so at some point in time they might just fail on you, so having a backup is a good idea. But the whole idea behind it is making sure that you've got some strategies in place so that if you do have your data compromised, you're able to get it back. You're able to get your systems back online. And oftentimes what that means is you've got some very structured steps that you're going to take. First I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this with my backups, et cetera, et cetera. So having some kind of plan in place is always necessary. And you'll notice there that middle yellow bulb there, it says using a 3-2-1-1 backup strategy. 3-2-1-1 might not be something that you're particularly familiar with. You might understand, if you've been in the backup world, you might understand 3-2-1, but what's that extra one? We're actually going to be getting into that because that's the piece I think is going to be most important when it comes to ransomware. But essentially, your 3-2-1 strategy is all about making sure that you've got multiple copies of your data. You've got your live copy, you've got three copies of your data. One of them is live, right? This is your live data. The second copy is your backup, all right? So you've got, at the very least, you've got 2 copies there. And then that additional one means you've also got a copy offsite, all right? So the 3 data is in 3 different places: production, on a backup device, and then something that is offsite. That's your 3. 2 simply means you got to have it in at least 2 different places: your production and the backup, and then that 1 literally is talking about the one that's offsite. And we'll talk about that extra one here in just a minute. But that's the other layer. That's the other mode. You want to go to your cybersecurity first, and then when you're finally infected, make sure that you've got that orchestrated recovery down pat and ready to go, so that you know how to restore that data when the time finally comes, right? And then that final piece right there in the green, your processes, okay? Processes are all about what are we doing as an organization. Sure, we've got these security measures in place. Sure, we now have some orchestrated, recovery items that we know what to do if we run into a problem, right? But then processes are pretty much everything else, helping your users know how to treat their data. They know that when they look at their email, and if it comes from somebody that they don't know, to think twice before they click the link. All of these types of things is all part of the process, is making sure that when you do have backups, you're testing them. You're wanting to make sure that what you've got is going to be able to be usable again. All right, and that's what the whole process is thinking about. So when you're looking at ransomware prevention, I like to actually say this isn't necessarily ransomware prevention strategy, but more a strategy to address all the aspects that surround a ransomware attack. So let's take a look at these, these little bullet points. Once again, let's remember ransomware prevention requires this multimodal strategy. There are no silver bullets. You can reduce the probability with some of these processes, with the cybersecurity. Attacks can definitely happen. Orchestrated recovery is crucial. But when it comes to ransomware specifically, let's consider that second one in your 3-2-1-1 backup strategy. All right? Let's go ahead and talk about that now for a little bit. Welcome to the 3-2-1-1 world. We're going to go ahead and address, first of all, why we need backup in the first place. All right? We've got our critical systems that are running. These are production systems that are essentially, powering our organization. I think everybody here knows that there are some critical systems that they are absolutely sure if they didn't have access to that data or they didn't have access to that system, they're pretty much going to be dead in the water because it's the lifeblood of their organization, right? We got to protect those systems, okay? So what do? We create a backup. There's all sorts of different ways you can back up. You can back up individual files. There's solutions out there that'll back up complete systems so that you can restore those complete systems quickly and easily. There's all sorts of different places you can go to get a good backup, which is great. That's your first check. Congratulations, you're doing your first backup. Okay. And there we go. Typically, you're going to be backing up to some kind of a backup server, some kind of a backup appliance, storage device. Heck, this could be something as simple as a NAS device. I've seen people do something as easy as just plug in a USB drive to their machine, back up to that, take it off and take it home. I mean, there's all sorts of ways in which you can handle that, okay? That's number 1 when it comes to your 3. Number 2 is go ahead and replicate that data to an offsite location, all right? And that would be, so you've got two places where your data is residing: your production machine, your initial backup device. The third place is going to be offsite, right? Oftentimes, as you can see, this could be backing up across a WAN. It can be a third-party cloud, just like we're saying here. I work with a lot of organizations who do have, replication to either an offsite data center that they currently manage, or maybe a separate location that they're at, but, they're following that particular strategy. 3 copies of data, 1 copy production, 1 copy backup, 1 copy offsite. All right, so there we go. 3 copies of the data, 2 copies in different media, at least 1 copy in a separate location. And honestly, for the longest time, if you dealt with your backup strategy like this, you were good. right? You're actually pretty good. A1, check. Because you've guarded against a number of things. Bad actors within your organization, hit your production servers. You got one backup that's that's there and available. You can go ahead and restore so long as that particular device has not been destroyed, right? Or has not been compromised. If you've got your backups replicated to an offsite location, let's say, here we're in Houston, we're not impervious necessarily to hurricanes here or flooding or even fires. Anywhere in the world, your organization could be susceptible to a fire. So, when you consider those, potential tragedies, if you've got something off-site, even if everything were to just completely go south and everything you've got locally are destroyed, you've at least got your data off-site that you can restore from. So, boom, if you're following that 3-2-1-1 or that 3-2-1 strategy, you're in good shape. Now, when ransomware enters the picture, that kind of all goes away because ransomware has become so sophisticated now that if it affects your production data to begin with, it's very easy now for ransomware to spread its little evil fingers to your storage devices and could very well potentially encrypt and actually make useless your backup data. So your two data locations locally could be completely compromised, which leaves you just your offsite backup, if you're following that 3-2-1 rule. But the problem is ransomware can now even infect across your WAN, and we are seeing more and more often that even if you have that offsite backup, simply because there's still that IP connection, there's still that ability to grab that cloud data, we're finding more and more ways for those ransomware attacks to not just affect stuff locally, but also affect stuff offsite. All right? So again, where we used to feel safe, that safety, you just can't really rely on that anymore. So now we got to add that second one. All right? That second one is an immutable copy of that backup. Okay? An immutable copy of the data. Now, what are we talking about when we're referring to immutability? I think we actually have a slide here. Yeah. When we're talking about immutability, we're talking about data that is saved and can no longer be compromised. It cannot be modified. All right? Now, there have been ways in which you can have that data immutable for quite a long time. Your original tape backups, those tapes, for the most part, were immutable, right? They were separate. They're literally air-gapped from the actual devices that data is stored on. So, A+, tape backup, that's immutable. That's great. Outside of that, you could take your backups and you can burn them to a DVD and lock that away in an archive, right? Boom, immutable. That's great. Problem with that is there's not really much of a problem. It's good, but man, if you get yourself in a scenario where you got to go to that archive, think of all the time it's going to take to have to go through, identify what data is needed, find the right dates, and be able to get that all restored. That is just not something that we're dealing with or we want to deal with now in the 21st century, right? Wouldn't it be better to have some other way, a better way to have immutable data that you can go to act as your recovery in a scenario where you're hit by ransomware? So let's enter an immutability appliance. How about that? Arcserve does have something like that. We call it our OneSafe. All right, let's talk about OneSafe here for a minute. Our OneSafe device, and I'm not saying that Arcserve is the only player in town that offers immutability, but given that I'm from there and I represent the organization, we'll chat about it for a little bit. That OneSafe device is an immutable storage device, meaning that the data that is on it does stay. It is only deleted when it's told to be deleted, and the data on there cannot be changed. A ransomware attack is not going to encrypt that data because it can't. Right? Immutable. The snapshots that we have preserve the original copy of the data, and they prevent that ransomware from deleting or encrypting it. And it also supports 2FA for added security. How about that? All right. This OneSafe device is also scalable. Okay, let's talk about, this actually kind of addresses that other first challenge when it comes to data growth, being able to manage all of that. How do you get ahead of all that data that is being created? Well, if you're buying a static set of drives, on a RAID array, you're pretty much stuck with that. until you have filled it up, right? And then once you've filled it up, you've filled it up. You've used up all that storage. You got to buy more, and you're kind of starting again. You can't necessarily expand on a RAID array, which means that investment is only going to last you so long. All right? With the OneSafe device, not only are we dealing with immutable storage, but we're able to help you accommodate that growth by simply adding storage as you need it, right? This is not a RAID device. We're not utilizing RAID in order to get better efficiency out of your drives or, to be able to protect the data. We're just simply, I'll talk about how we actually do that here in just a minute, but this is a very scalable device. You need more storage? Grab some more drives, throw it in the box. Your box is full? Add another box. We'll create a cluster, a little ring that'll support as many as 7 devices. So as you need to grow, you can grow, all right? It's a fantastic solution. But here's the real kicker. This is object-based, all right? This is not block-based storage or not block storage. Your block storage is what your traditional RAID arrays and stuff like that are utilizing, where we'll go ahead and we'll save that data to your NFS shares and all that. You've got, a minimum of 3 drives in a RAID 5 or RAID 6 kind of a scenario. And one of those becomes a parity drive, but the idea is you can lose a drive and you're okay. Object-based storage means that we're taking all those items that are being saved, all those different files, they're being saved as an individual object. The objects themselves cannot be modified, just in their nature. They cannot be modified. So, the way that works is if you need to read a file, if you need to modify a file, yeah, we'll go ahead and read that object. We'll let you go ahead and make some changes to it, but when that gets saved, we're not saving it back to the same object. We're creating a brand new object, which, by the way, is immutable. We will then snapshot what's on there. Those snapshots are files, objects. They're immutable. They cannot be modified or changed. So the underlying architecture and the way that particular device is actually created makes it so that you really can't do anything to that data that's going to compromise it. It's actually really great. But and the fact that it is object-based means that we're not necessarily hindered by the limitations that RAID offers you when it comes to expandability. You need more storage, just add new storage, very little configuration. Hey, we actually have questions. Yeah, what's your question? The object, so being object-based, you're saying also implies encryption. It's not necessarily encrypted, it just can't be changed. You can access it. You don't necessarily need to have a password or whatever to access that particular file. It's just the file itself is just, here I am, you can't touch me. I mean, that's just kind of the way, that's essentially the way that it works. If you want to change it, you want to change something, you open the file, you read it, but when you make modifications and you save it, it leaves the underlying or the original file intact and creates a brand new one and saves it as a brand new object. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So another question is that, so I was asked to do offline backup.
Uh-huh.
And I think Immutable might include that requirement offline. Because offline, what it does is that, you are not connected so to prevent the ransomware attack.
Right. Yeah, so what she's saying is that, she's heard of immutability or recognizes or identifies immutability as something that can be, let's say you do have your data offsite, but you're leaving it isolated, right? It's not necessarily connected to the other. Air-gapped, for example, is a great way to say it, right? That is a great way to keep that data immutable. But again, it kind of goes to that same idea of locking it away, archiving it. And one of the issues with doing it that way, if it is going to be completely air-gapped and you don't have an IP connection to it regularly, is it's going to be very difficult to make updates to that storage. So if you make any changes, you actually literally have to be mindful to take that data and make sure that it's updated on the offsite location, right?
Okay, so your Immutable is online, it's connected. But your
yes. Right. So when we're talking about the OneSafe solution, we're talking about a device that remains actively connected to our network, right? And it is live, but the nature of the device itself simply means that the data cannot be changed. It cannot be modified. It cannot be encrypted. Does that clarify? Good. Yeah, thanks for asking the question. That's excellent. Going back now to kind of that scalability and everything, another thing that the OneSafe offers, you can see right here, it utilizes RF2 or RF3, replication factor. What is that? We're talking about, you know how within RAID, you know, you've got a parity drive, when you're dealing with like a RAID 5 or a RAID 6, that parity drive can kind of help identify what pieces need to be utilized to rebuild a new drive if you lose one in that array, right? Well, we don't use RAID. But what we do instead is we will simply say, hey, listen, you know, you can expand and scale this out as much as you want. You can buy as much storage as you want. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to write that data in more than one place within this array. We'll write it on this drive, but we're also going to write it on this drive. You know, you add another box. Well, we're going to write the data here. We're going to write it here. And we're going to write it here so that you actually literally have 2 copies. Or if you're dealing with RF3, 3 copies of actual data within that particular ring. All right, another benefit of your object-based storage. You know, you're not going to be bound by those limitations of RAID anymore. You can expand, but you can also make sure that you've got that redundancy to make sure the data, if you do lose a drive, you're good. And in a large array, if you actually fill up a full 7-unit array of one of these OneSafe devices, you could lose an entire device if you've got that RF3 in place. An entire device can go down, and you've still got copies of that data that you can actually utilize. All right. And then the other benefit, you know, typically when we're dealing with object-based storage, it's kind of difficult to work with because we're dealing primarily with APIs to gain access to those objects. It's not like, you know, an actual real SMB or NFS share on a typical NAS that you're dealing with, right? And so typically and historically, object-based storage devices can be a little bit tricky to work with. Oftentimes it requires specific drivers to be created just so your Microsoft operating system is able to read from the data correctly. What we've done with OneSafe is we've said, okay, the underlying architecture is object-based storage, but we have decided to build on top of that an NFS or an SMB file system that you can access, you know, that underlying object-based storage. So you plug it in, and it's a NAS as far as anybody else is concerned. Very, very simple. Share that data, easily accessible from the network. All that additional complexity does not have to be addressed. So that's what we're dealing with the OneSafe device. Yeah. There's no special software that is needed. So when you plug it into the network and you turn that guy on, you can access it by way of a web portal, so to speak. So, you know, access our one system with a web portal, create your shares. Microsoft, Linux, they'll all look at it and say, it's just like any other NAS. It's okay, yeah. It's in the firmware of the device, the operating system that is actually built in there to manage it. That's all controlled through that. Yeah. The one system environment can either be a private environment that you're deploying locally or accessed from the cloud. Yeah. You had a question though, sir. Did we address that? Yeah, is it primary storage or is it backup? It can be both. That's the cool thing about this. You know, Arcserve, we deal in backup and disaster recovery. So of course, we're going to consider this OneSafe to be a great repository for backup, right? We're absolutely going to suggest it to you, but when it comes right down to it, if all you really want is just some great file storage, something that's easily accessible, easily expandable, something you can immediately just drop in and say, we got our storage now, the OneSafe device can be absolutely used for that, okay? In fact, we get a lot of people coming up to us and saying, well, I don't use Arcserve as my backup solution, but I really like this OneSafe device. Can I use it? You know, so then of course we ask, well, what's your backup? And they'll say Veeam or they'll say Acronis, you know, and we'll go ahead and we'll squeal and we'll give them a dirty look and all that kind of stuff. But then we'll say, yeah, you can use it. It's perfectly fine. It's just storage, right? But it gives you so many great benefits. Okay. Yes. Any disk. I mean, it's not a particular type of disk. These are they're ATA disks essentially. I mean, they're nothing special. They're not SSDs. No. no, no. We had an SSD flavor for a while, but not anymore. It is. One thing you want to understand about the OneSafe device is that it doesn't have a lot of high IOPS. Okay, so a lot of the speed of writing is going to be dependent on what kind of network access you have to it, what kind of speed you're dealing with on your network. I mean, we're dealing with typically 7,200 RPM drives. It's not like this isn't a device that's all about real high performance, but it's about offering the storage that you need, the expandability that you need, and the protection that you need. So that's a great question from right there in the back of the room. That's fantastic. I think I've already addressed this. What does immutability really mean? Okay, data is fixed, unchangeable, guaranteed recovery, all of that kind of stuff. And let me talk about that for just a second. When it comes to that immutable storage, the way that OneSafe device actually works is once you've written to it, right? The OneSafe device, the very first time, right when you start it up and you start adding data to it, we're going to snapshot that data every 90 seconds. So you're immediately getting that continuous data protection. All right? So we're taking snapshots on a regular basis. Those snapshots, again, are immutable. So let's say we do run into this scenario. You get hit with ransomware. It's out there. It has now infected all of your critical systems. All right? That's nightmarish enough. Okay? And then let's just say it does go in and it does infect that OneSafe device. And your immediately accessible data, because you're saving it from your infected systems, is also encrypted. It's, this is data that you can't use. Well, guess what? You've got snapshots. And it's so simple to promote a snapshot to the production data. All you got to do is go through your list of snapshots, identify the appropriate date and time that you're going to be past that particular infection, and you've got good data. All you got to do is hit go. We'll promote that data. That now becomes your live data on that machine, and it's near instantaneous. All right? So tell me, if you have a ransomware attack, that's not what you would want to have happen, instead of having to go into this archive where you've got your tape drives and try to restore from that, right, or anything like that. So it's it's a really great solution. Okay, I think I just explained this. Data gets written to the share. OneSafe continuous data protection happens. You got your regular snapshots. Ransomware can't change those snapshots. We can instantly promote then to get that data back. All right, so this is a nice little summary about how wonderful our solution is. We're always going to say that. Your usage may vary, but it's probably not going to vary very much. The advantages of your traditional NAS device, suited for dynamic transactional data, simple data access, NFS, SMB shares, simple to create. Everybody knows that. Compatible with enterprise apps. The advantages of object storage, excellent scalability. Remember, just add the storage as you need to. Simple management with unified storage access, data management features. Oh, I didn't even get to this. Inline deduplication and encryption. You can, when you deploy a OneSafe device, you can make sure that data is encrypted. And it happens on the device itself. You can have it deduped, So when it comes to backup, and you're backing up a lot of different Windows servers, all the commonalities in that Windows operating system will be written once. And that's it, regardless of how many servers you might be backing up. All the commonality is going to be written once, and the only thing that you're going to be saving from that point forward during backups, for example, is going to be just the little weird changes. So that's one way in which you can kind of manage that data growth, right? When you're looking at limitations of the amount of storage that you've got compared to data that you've actually got, that deduplication is going to do a lot when it comes to kind of compressing that and making sure that you're getting the right kind of value out of that particular investment. NAS plus object-based storage, dynamic scale-out solution. It's fantastic. Okay, so I don't know that we need to get into this. And by not talking about this, this might, limit my my little talk by a few extra minutes here. But there's a lot of differences between your NASs and your SANs and all that other kind of stuff. SAN, we're dealing with block storage, right? You're still dealing with RAID devices, so you got to fall within those particular limitations of RAID. Your typical NAS devices, it's a very common protocols you're dealing with, CIFS, NFS, SMB. But again, we're typically dealing with block storage. So again, you're kind of stuck within those particular limitations. But then your object store, like the OneSafe device, you're getting the benefits of that object store. Was that a hand raise over there? Oh, I saw your hand go up and I thought, oh yeah, another question. But that's okay. That's all right. Oh, another question over here. Great.
So I'm convinced that you have very solid backup plan.
Mhm.
How the storage can I use your software?
When you're dealing with Arcserve's traditional backup solutions, absolutely, you can restore. All right, those aren't necessarily the focus of this particular presentation. However, Arcserve does we have unified data protection is kind of our baby right now. That's kind of our main product. It does file backup, complete system backup. We've got standby VMs, all that kind of stuff that you can do. And absolutely, it's got everything that you need to do bare metal restores, file folder restores, complete VM recovery. All of those types of things are available in our software solutions and our backup appliances. When you're dealing with OneSafe, we're not even really saying you're backing it up. We're just protecting it and making sure that data can't be changed. And if you do have a problem, well, we'll just go to node snapshot and we'll just make that live again. And that's essentially what we're doing. Yeah. Does that make sense? In backup scenarios, the OneSafe is actually protecting your backup data. So you've already got your backups, and your OneSafe is saying, you're not going to touch this backup data, right? That's essentially what we're dealing with. Yeah. Good. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So many slides. What does scale out bring to the table? All the stuff I've already talked about. The scalability, the fact that it's object-based, the fact that everything is immutable, that is written to the drive, the fact that you get this deduplication, and all that in there. We include 5 years of support, RF2, RF3, the failure tolerance, all of that kind of stuff, add on to nodes, et cetera, to scale out. It's fantastic. Now, if you really want to get into, the different flavors of OneSafe, this is essentially what we're dealing with. You can buy them a number of different ways, especially, indicating what kind of capacity you're buying. And remember, you run out of capacity, just buy another unit, buy some more drives, whatever that is. But we've got the 2512 is our current model, and the different flavors would be a 96 terabyte flavor, a 144 terabyte, or a 216 terabyte flavor. And that is your raw capacity. All right, when you consider the RF2 or the RF3, where you're writing your data more than once, that of course is going to diminish, the actual usable data that you're able to get. However, with deduplication, a lot of that you might feel is wasted by those extra writes kind of goes away, and it takes away from that. But these are the different, that's the status. This is what you get with the different flavors, right? And notice that we can actually include drives up to 18 terabytes. So there's a lot to offer there. There's a lot to offer. All right, so what is the OneSafe difference? So there's flexibility. There's file on object store platform, the ability to read your object data as if it's on a regular file system, that's traditionally used. Highly scalable. It's a distributed file system with a single pool of storage. Yeah, which is another thing. So you might ask me, all right, so you can create a cluster of OneSafes. You've told me that you can add as many as 7 of these OneSafe units in a cluster. Well, what happens when you need some more storage? All right. Well, everything within this initial 7, units, in this initial, we call it a ring or a cluster, it's going to be a single namespace. All right. We're going to call it, server A or whatever, but it's all going to be the same namespace. So if you do need more storage, keep the existing storage, just add another one. We'll start a new namespace. All right. But again, it's just like adding another NAS to your environment. Is essentially what you're dealing with there, okay? So that's what we're talking about, the single pool of storage. Add another pool, essentially, if you begin to the point where you need more. Ransomware protection, diverse use cases. You're going to find that there are comparable solutions out there. There are organizations out there that offer a solution very similar to what Arcserve is offering with the OneSafe. However, you're going to find that what we've been able to do is to keep the costs relatively low in comparison. In fact, we are just recently, I don't know exactly how recently, but we are now considered in Gartner to probably offer one of the most compelling reasons, according to Gartner, to have a OneSafe device is it's got a very low point of entry cost-wise compared to similar solutions that are out there in the industry. So it is one of the places that I would suggest you look at first if it looks like you're looking for immutable storage. But again, no APIs required. Again, kind of like I was saying before, we've got that NFS or that SMB system built on top of it. All right. So this is kind of now, ending things for me. By the way, you've been a really great audience, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you. Arcserve does more than just immutable storage, all right? These little beautiful animated little spinny things that come up here are just talking about all the different ways in which Arcserve can be beneficial. Remember that we are a backup and data resiliency company first that offers all sorts of great solutions, but now is including, immutable storage, ways in which you can protect that data from ransomware attacks, simply because of the way that the nature of the device that we've actually built there. So, we got all these appliances. Oh, I didn't even mention this, but our UDP, backup and disaster recovery appliances, they're actually protected by Sophos. So the device itself, the box itself, even if you're not dealing with a OneSafe and you're dealing with a traditional just backup server with our UDP store or our UDP backup software on it, we're actually protecting the underlying operating system with Sophos on those, so that we can prevent unauthorized access and all that kind of stuff, just built in. So we run the gamut of different things to make sure that you are able to manage your data, protect it, and be able to recover from it. And even now, with the threat of ransomware, we're a top solution to make sure that you're able to recover from those unfortunate ransomware attacks that unfortunately you very well might be susceptible to, even though you might be trying really hard not to be. With that, I think that does it for me, guys. This has been a really great opportunity. Again, my name is Martin Merrill. I'm literally just on the other side of the wall. If you think I'm good looking, you want to ask me out on a date, that's fine. It's just that taken, sorry. But I'm certainly happy to have more conversations with you if you would like about immutability and all that kind of stuff. But thanks a bunch. I'm going to wrap things up and call it good. All right. Thank you so much for being part of this. Well, with the OneSafe device, OS is not an issue at all. When it comes to the UDP, if you want to use Arcserve to actually create backups, Windows, Linux, we're not backing up anything Mac, unless it's a virtual machine. We could probably back up a VM, but there's agents that might need to be involved otherwise. Okay, thank you very much, guys.